Now, at the moment, Africa only accounts for 5% of global import traded goods and 7% of export goods. According to Nomvo Kasolo, African consultant at Frost Sullivan, this could improve drastically if the continent taps into its transshipment hubs potential in order to take advantage of the recovering global maritime sector. Nomvo joins us with greater insights and perspective on the value of developing transshipment hubs in Africa. Nomvo, always a pleasure. Good afternoon to you.
Good afternoon to you, Nilatanda, and to all the viewers. Yeah.
Wonderful, Nomvo. Maybe you can help us paint a picture, in terms of how Africa fares, versus the rest of the world in terms of maritime, the maritime sector, how much goods and services we do move as a result of that.
Okay, definitely. So firstly, maybe let's look at the global perspective. So in terms of us, utilizing the maritime industry, we're very close to the global industry. Overall, globally, 90% of goods are moved using maritime sector or the ships, the sea and everything. And it is the same in Africa as well. However, in terms of actually all the exports and the imports that we're currently trading, it's much lower when we look at the global percentage. And the reason of this has to do with infrastructure challenges, has to do with the high port tariffs, the import and export tariffs in the region, which is why it's significantly a bit lower. But overall, even for Africa, we're largely dependent on the maritime industry, particularly for the imports coming from all the other countries that we import from. But this is something that can potentially be changed if we develop within the region in terms of our own infrastructure, in terms of regional integration. But yeah, within the continent, if we're just looking within the continent, within Africa, I mean, transport, road transport would utilize more. And that's why we have the African Free Continental Trade Area. That is an advantage for the area, for the region, yeah.
So let's talk about, transshipment hubs, Nomvo, and, take us into your confidence here. When we think of them, what exactly are we imagining being at play?
Yeah, right. It's one of those terms that if you've never heard it, you're like, what is that exactly? So just to break it down, when we look at global shipping supply chains, right, you want to move your goods from point A, let's say in Europe, to Africa. But sometimes you find that you do not have connectivity between Europe and Africa. So then transshipment hubs come in as a zone or a region or a place where you are able to almost unload your goods and then move them to like your smaller shipping lines and everything. So when there's no direct connection between route A and route B, but you want your goods to get to route B, then you introduce this mini hub, this mini, intermediate point to allow you to then move these goods to the final destination. The advantage of this is that, yes, you do get the goods to the final destination, but you also introduce an additional opportunity for now this region that is going to act as the buffer zone. And for Africa as well, this is where we need to start tapping into that. Because, of course, we are important in the global supply chain. However, we're also strategically located next to the biggest shipping zones like the Suez Canal. But also Africa as a whole, we had a huge coastal line and a lot of the trading networks also moved through that.
It's very interesting here. So let's talk about current capacity. Do we have 1, 2 transshipment hubs that are in existence, on the continent? Or is it, a new concept that we probably should jump on as soon as possible in order to get those returns on investment?
Yeah, no, definitely. I mean, if we look at where most of our goods and trades come from, so you're looking at North Africa. So in terms of established transshipment hubs on the continent, you're looking at Egypt, North Africa, Suez Canal, like I mentioned there. However, there are other examples of where the region could potentially develop. So if we look at South Africa, so moving from Durban, South Africa, connecting to the Philippines, that is a potential route that can further be developed and is an example of a key transshipment hub. However, we could develop more of our ports, which we are seeing in regions such as, Nigeria, such as Kenya. If we increase, I think, the infrastructure in these, then these could also potentially act as one. But in terms of current examples, we've got a lot of the ports moving in, North Africa. So Egypt being one of the biggest. Just because it's strategically located next to the Suez Canal, and then just because South Africa is a bit further down. However, we have the Durban port, which is really crucial for trade and development in Africa. But now what we also want to look at is what other potential ports are there in the region, and that is why I mentioned even the Eastern Cape as a potential advantage. Yeah.
It's very interesting, Nomvo. So we know that we would need here first of all is physical infrastructure. But what else,
Yes.
you know, would we have to have in place to be able to, you know, enhance our ability to get transshipment hubs going, and as soon as possible as well?
Yeah, definitely infrastructure, challenges around government, challenges around port management, connectivity, right? You need to be able, if your ports are not functioning, no shipping line will want to, you know, move their cargo through that because there will be delay. So resolving the current challenges that we have in South African ports, which is congestion, which is port infrastructure, which is also the tariffs in the region. But if you have more cargo coming into the region because of the efficiency of the region, that with time will reduce your tariffs. So that is one thing. So it's around infrastructure, investment, inefficiencies around management. And yes, those are some of the top ones that we can be looking at.
And when we speak about the African Continental Free Trade Area, you know, we do
Yes.
obviously speak about our road networks here, but is there no way for the maritime industry to also, you know, take advantage of this trade agreement that we are trying to get buy-in from you know, the continent's private sector as well as public sectors?
Yeah, no, definitely. Africa's advantage is because of this, you know, the regional integration initiatives that we are seeing on the ground, because what it will do, Nolotando, is increase the overall productivity of the region, right? If Africa can increase, like if we look at Asia, which is the key example of a really active and productive transshipment region or area, especially even around maritimes, it's also because of the intra-trade within Asia, you know, the efficiencies around that. And then think about that, if we develop that as well for Africa through the framework that we already have, you have more and more goods moving. You will reduce the costs that you're currently having with export and imports. And then therefore you're attracting even more investors to be able to come into the regions because they see the productivity of the region.
It's wonderful. Sounds like a great opportunity, and I really hope that we can get our ducks in a row to take advantage of this. Thank you, Nomvo, for your time. It's always a pleasure catching up with you. That was Nomvo Kasolo, Africa Consultants at Frost Sullivan.